So our next speaker, a pal of mine, I'm pleased to say, someone I've been meeting with quite regularly over the last year.
Thanks, Moses.
Deepak Chopra. Have you ever seen so noble a photograph? I was really bummed out the first time I saw this. I thought, what's his name? Brian Adams. He's never done a shot of me that looks as good as that.
You have to have a good subject.
And what I wanted to mention to you all is that this is going to turn out to be the best-selling cover ever of Zoomer magazine so far.
Oh.
And I think the reason for that is that there is a strong, abiding, and in fact growing interest in our society in that interesting fusion that Deepak represents of Western medicine and Eastern attitudes to self-actualization, self-realization, meditation, yoga, all that stuff. Deepak, can you enlighten us, please?
Thank you, Moses. Thank you, Moses. Thank you for coming here and giving me this opportunity. So, very powerful speeches before me. One on the denial of death in our society, and the other on increasing strife in the world, violence, conflict, terrorism in the name of God. And to add to that, I think there are lots of other problems. We have an environment that is totally devastated, an ecosystem that is full of carcinogens, an increasing epidemic of diseases because we have totally destroyed our rivers and waters and our earth. We are the only species that kills its own kind in the name of God, and we have caused the extinction of other species. We have a world where 50% of its population lives on less than $2 a day, 20% on less than $1 a day. And the question is there any solution? And I think that if we have to be realistic, we have to very soberly face the fact that if there is ever going to be another mass extinction, because from time to time, throughout the history of our species and other species, there have been mass extinctions due to natural disasters. But if there is going to be another mass extinction, probably it won't be a natural disaster this time, it'll be the behavior of the human species. Nature might just say the human experiment was good, didn't work. So that's the dark side of this whole saga of our evolution. But I think there is another side, and it behooves us to look at that other side, is that we have a nervous system which is very different from the nervous system of other species. And we have a consciousness that asks, who are we? Where did we come from? What's the meaning and purpose of our existence? Do we have a soul? Does God exist? What happens after we die? I think the more one looks at the scientific endeavor, one realizes that since we have the capacity to ask those questions, we may, in fact, have the capacity to know the answers. There's a saying in many wisdom traditions that if you live the right questions, then life has a very interesting way of moving you into the answers. So my own background comes from medicine as an internist, as a neuroendocrinologist. And my interest in so-called mind-body medicine began when I started to see that you could have two patients who had the same illness, who received the same treatment, who saw the same doctor and could still have completely different outcomes. And he knew something was going on, but it was a while before I started to see that we had a very fundamental flaw in the way we understood biological organisms, particularly the human body, but also a fundamental flaw in our understanding of what is called consciousness. So let me address those two problems. The first flaw is that we look at the body as an anatomical structure, as a noun, when in fact it's an activity. It's a verb, and I'll explain that to you in a moment. And the second flaw is that we look at consciousness as a brain activity. So we look at, just like the gallbladder produces bile and the pancreas produces pancreatic juice and the stomach produces hydrochloric acid, we, in the last 300 years, because of a reductionist science, have assumed that the brain produces consciousness. If you have thoughts and feelings and emotions and desires and memories and dreams and aspirations and longings and intuition and inspiration and insight, it's all the dance of molecules in the brain. And the reductionist model of the brain, actually, because it's based on classical physical laws, denies us even free will, because everything is determined through the behavior of molecules. Those two models have led to a reductionist science and a reductionist medicine, which only looks at mechanisms and then seeks to interfere with the mechanisms of illness through either pharmaceuticals or surgery. This doesn't mean I don't endorse pharmaceuticals or surgery. It just means that we think that's the only solution to our problems, when in fact we now know that 80% of the drugs we use are of optional or marginal benefit, and that $200 billion of cardiac surgery is done every year just for one thing, coronary artery bypass, $200 billion, which does not extend life expectancy in even 1% of the population that receives it. The reductionist model. So is there another way of looking at our bodies? And if you look at the wisdom traditions of all the world, they say that you have to look at your body as a process, not as a structure. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus was the first one to say, your body is like a river, and just like you cannot step into the same river twice because new water is flowing in, the real you cannot step into the same flesh and bones twice, because in every moment you are actually in dynamic exchange with the elements and forces of the universe through processes such as eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, and the inner world of thoughts and feelings and hopes and aspirations, meaningful relationships, purpose, and all the things that create a very rich inner experience. So this now turns out to be a biological fact. The physical bodies that you're using to sit on these chairs are not the bodies that you came in with a little while ago when you came into this room. Even with one breath that you breathe in 10 to the power of 22 atoms from the physical universe. With every breath that you breathe out 10 to the power of 22 atoms that have their origin in every cell of your body. So at the atomic level, you are breathing out bits and pieces of our heart and kidney and brain tissue. And technically speaking, we're intimately sharing our organs with each other all the time. So the great poet Walt Whitman once said, every atom that belongs to you as well belongs to me. This is not a metaphor of poetry anymore. You can do mathematical calculations and you can show without a shadow of doubt that right this moment, you have in your body at least 1 million atoms that were once in the body of Jesus Christ or Buddha or Genghis Khan or anyone else that you care to think about. In just the last 3 weeks, a quadrillion atoms have gone through your body that have gone through the body of every other living species on this planet. So not only are our minds entangled, but our bodies are entangled with our extended body that we call the ecosystem, the environment. It's not the environment, it's our extended body. The trees are our lungs. If they didn't breathe, you wouldn't breathe. The rivers and waters are your circulation. The earth is your body that's recycling. And today, because of some real breakthroughs in science, we're beginning to see that there is no such thing as a separate mind. Right now, as a result of this communication, and perhaps through social networks and Ustream and Livestream or whatever else is happening, there's a whole dance of entangled mind. As I speak to you, there are very specific neural networks that are firing and others that are not firing, very specific neurotransmitters that are being released and others that are not being released. And this entanglement exists not only horizontally through space, but vertically through culture, through history, through religion, and all the things that have made us who we are. Once we begin to see the entanglement of our mind, the entanglement of our bodies, and the entanglement of the ecosystem with which we are inseparable, a new story seems to weave itself together. And that new story is that if we want to really find solutions to the devastating problems that exist in our culture, in our civilization, in our countries, a new story involves a new relationship. It involves a new relationship between us that goes beyond our ethnic, our national, our religious, and our cultural boundaries. A new story that involves a new dialogue with what we call the environment, because it's not the environment, it's our extended body. We have a personal body, we have a universal body, they're both equally ours. A new story that involves a deep shift in our own identity, beyond our body, beyond our mind, to a field of potentiality. And when that story emerges, and when that story reaches critical mass, because we can now connect with each other in a way that never was possible. The internet is only since 1995 publicly, so it's only 15 years old. And yet, because of the new networks of the planetary mind that are being established right now as we speak, we have revolutions occurring in Syria and Libya and Yemen and unrest in Saudi Arabia, but we also have a new way to begin to heal ourselves and the ecosystem of which we are a part. Healing is a word that's very interesting because it's related to the word holy. Healing is the return of the memory of wholeness that comes through transformation into a higher consciousness. And it is based on a deep understanding that consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of matter or biology, but it's an expression of nature itself, that at the fundamental levels of nature, consciousness is the ground of existence that differentiates into everything that we call reality. It's the basis of our thinking, our environment, our social interactions, our biology, our personal relationships, and even the forces of nature. And based on this model, there's a new understanding of what it means to be in good health that includes everything from career health, social health, physical health, financial health, and community health. I cannot go into details of this slide because of time, but just to give you a little bit of information, if you have a happy friend, your happiness goes up by 15%. Has biological consequences in terms of immunomodulation and other things that happen in your body. But if your happy friend has a happy friend that you don't know, it goes up another 10%. And if your happy friends has a happy friend, it keeps going up. And So you say, how does the happiness of people that I don't know influence my well-being? And the reason is that consciousness is a singular that has no plural. It's like a field that transcends space and time. And there are many other reasons. Similarly, if your supervisor at work ignores you, your rate of disengagement goes up by 45%. But if he or she criticizes you, it goes down to 20%, because you would rather be criticized than ignored. At least now you exist. On the other hand, if they don't ignore you or criticize you, but notice a single strength, it goes down to less than 1%. Disengaged and unhealthy workers in the US cost us about $380 billion a year in lost economy. So this is the entanglement of our physical, financial, career, social well-being, which is a prelude to some really great breakthroughs that are happening in science today. A science that is based on consciousness, that is saying that our bodies are not structures, but processes which are very dynamic and entangled, that our body is a field of energy and information, that our bodies, our genes are not deterministic. Do you know that 500 genes can be turned on and off just depending on the quality of your thinking and behavior and personal relationships and exercise and quality of sleep? That you can change your relationship with time, that you can change the very structure of your nervous system through inner work. So if you self-reflect, your prefrontal cortex goes activated on MRI scans. If you have the qualities of love, compassion, joy, equanimity, your limbic system lights up and your homeostasis kicks in. If you learn to perceive your inner body, a process that's called interoception, instead of perception, you can actually influence healing in your body and restore homeostasis by activating a part of your brain called the insula. And that this deeper understanding ultimately leads to a deeper understanding of our own spirit, which has been mentioned, which gives us clues to the meaning of death, to the multidimensional nature of our existence, to the causes of what is called existential suffering, and to the fact that there's an inner core of your being that is not touched by space and time. So before I end my little discourse here, I want to try something with you right now. As you're listening to me right now, just turn your attention for a moment to who's listening. And that presence that you feel is your soul. It's your core consciousness. The great wisdom tradition said, hold on to that. It's the only part of you that's real. And if you do, you'll find a new freedom and new solutions to the problems that were created on another level of consciousness. Thank you.
Dinner with Deepak?
Yes,
yeah,
on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah? All right.
This is it?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll walk this way.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Deepak.
Thank
yeah.
you.
Are you going to stick around?
Yes.
Great. So over the course of the last year, I've gotten to know not only Deepak, but some members of his family. His daughter Malika was with us at ideacity last year. His son Gautam is producing a series with Deepak called Dinner with Deepak. And it's going to play on the Sci-Fi Channel in the United States, but with any luck at all, it'll also play on one of our brand new channels, the brand new one, Body, Mind, Spirit, Love. Look for it in the coming season.